episode of Talking About Us, nephew.
Yes.
I cannot believe we're going to do another episode.
Yes, we're doing another episode.
There's so much more to discuss. And this one is super special.
We're going to have another full house. It doesn't look like it, but we're going to have another one.
Yes. And one of the things that we were really interested in, but we hadn't quite been able to do yet, is we wanted to make sure we have a full spectrum of generation representation in this topic, this theme of finding our voices in community. And so on today, we don't have a single person who can legally drive.
Yeah. All our guests are, holding it down for the youth.
Yes. So can you tell our audience a little bit about today's topic? And then we're going to welcome our very special storytellers for today.
Yeah, absolutely. So today's topic is going to talk about youth, mental wellness, and schools. So we're going to really give an opportunity for our young folks to tell us what life has been like from their perspective now, and also coming in and somewhat out of a pandemic, how they've been surviving and thriving, battling different challenges, mental health concerns, things like that, and how their relationship is with adults and other forms of authority. And I think on par with our theme of finding your voice, we're giving them an opportunity to really speak. And I think we don't understand how often we kind of shun some of their opportunities to express themselves.
Question for you, nephew, before we get started with our special guest. So we have context. Tell the peoples what you were like at age 15. 14, 15.
Yeah.
What were you like? What was going on with you? What was going on with you at 14, 15?
Yeah, when we got this topic, I actually had to reflect, like, dang, what was I like during that time? And I think I was actually more rebellious than I think. Yeah, more, I wouldn't say outspoken, but just more like willing to kind of go against the grain. I think I hit that point around 14 and 15 where I started to question how things have been done up until that point. We even talk about some of these things developmentally or psychologically. Your brain develops and you start to question, do we have to do it this way? What if we do it this way? And how that starts to battle with adult figures during that time.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, and I honestly didn't think about it until just this moment, but 14, 15 was a super crucial year for me because my freshman, sophomore year of high school is when I started changing high schools. And you remember I went to 6 high schools. All of the changes started happening right at this moment.
Wow.
So this is when I actually started going through tons and tons of mental wellness crises. Like our family was in crisis and it was beginning right at this point. So I'm really interested in bringing our people into the scene. So I'm going to, if you can welcome your guests, I'm going to bring some special people into the scene. And listen. So keep in mind that some people are going to be tuning into this podcast only via audio, right? So here's what you cannot see if you're not looking at this on YouTube. The beautiful sentient beings that are on the screen. And I want to just shout out young people. We don't tell people enough. I really get frustrated with adults about this. We don't shout out young people enough and their brilliance and their beauty, and letting folks know, instead of just thinking a thing, we don't let folks know when we see light in them. And I know, and I haven't always told them, London and I know, because London and I talk about this, but one of the things that I want to just highlight about some of the young people on here is I have seen modeled phenomenal maturity in friendship and camaraderie and really like being there for somebody. One of the things that I think is really beautiful, and I see this with you and your brother, nephew, and I've seen this with London and with London's friends, is one of the things that was so devastating to me when I was 15 was when I moved away, there were so many people I never talked to again. And I was actually shocked at how tight London, Anna, and Vanya were when we moved out of state. It's like they didn't miss a beat. In a way, they were almost closer. We would come into town, they were just like thick as thieves. And I'm like, I've never even seen that before. Like in all of my dysfunction, there's so much functionality and health in their friendship. And I think that is so crucial. And I see this too in your relationship with your brother, how close, you are, and how in tune you still are even when you're away. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all of y'all, to Devon, Ellis, Vanya, London, Anna. Like, y'all are really dope. Y'all are doing things that seem regular to you, but they're not regular. Like, to be able to do that is phenomenal. And y'all all look good, so that's nice too. I mean, it just makes it easier, right?
And to that point, Kim, trust me, we know some grown adults who don't know how to handle relationships or get through conflict resolution. So just to kind of echo Kim's point, that's really something that we commend you guys for, and being able to just kind of pick up where you left off. A lot of times we're like, oh, I haven't seen you in years, and you feel some type of way, but you guys are able to just kind of pick up and keep that relationship nice and strong.
Mm-hmm. So I want to start with my first question. And then honestly, although we talked about some potential questions, I want y'all all to be prepared in case the freestyle happens, because the freestyle is always possible. But the way that I would like to start this is really talking about COVID for a second. I literally just said this multiple times to two different adults in the space when they're like, oh, well, we're for the kids. It's like, you never went through COVID plus puberty. COVID plus puberty? Y'all are in the throes of puberty. Puberty sucks. And y'all have been doing it, going through things we've never experienced before. So I would love to hear from all of you just about when all of that hit over the last 2 years. And let's be super real. If we can be completely honest, I'm interested in what it was like for y'all to be in school, because this means all of you would have probably been in middle school during COVID, the peak, well, the ascending of Black Lives Matter, seeing people die on social media on like hotcakes, the Capitol being stormed. Like, you're in middle school watching this happen. And so I would like to just get out of your way, and whoever wants to go first, I'd like to hear from all four of you to just share like what that was like for you being in middle school while like the world looked like it was on fire and the adults clearly did not have the wheel. Whoever would like to go first, please jump in, unmute, and let's lean in and start talking.
I can go. I think it was scary for me, kind of being in middle school. I was finally starting to get this big friend group I've always like dreamed of having, and I was finally starting to like understand my mental health a bit more and what it would look like. And right as I would kind of like get to the end of 7th grade, COVID happened, and it was very traumatic. I can say that blatantly, but I think a lot of the time to cope with like how unstable everything felt, how adults were quiet about COVID, how people were upset with me for not knowing how to handle COVID when nobody else themselves knew how to handle COVID, especially the people I look up to, adults and just people. Nobody knew what the right thing to do was, and yet the same people who didn't know the answer would get upset for it, which made it difficult to kind of get past it okay. And I think what kept me comfort in getting past COVID was talking to my friends. I think there's something really great about having such an unstable life, but just like having one stable thing that you know is like certain, having friendship, like having a tight-knit friend circle was really comforting to have. Having like texting people, like walking to people's houses, just walking my dog and stuff. I think when we had virtual learning, for some people, I bet it felt, I think every experience was different. No, in my case, I felt alienated and I was just like by myself. A lot of things didn't feel like real. So I'd be like sitting here on social media, texting my friends or whatever in the middle of class, and then I'd hear like about like 13 like Black lives like lost in like a month or so, and it was unreal and terrifying. But I guess that's how my COVID experience was, especially like in the beginning, and hearing about the Capitals like storming and everything. I felt like the end of the world was happening a little bit, and when you're experiencing something so terrifying, but something that hasn't happened before, and nobody knows what to do, especially the people who you look up to, it's very scary. And in those times, rather than relying on the adults and other people who I would typically look up to, I had to cope with the help of my friends and peers and other things that just brought me comfort. Because that was all the that was the few things that I think, the few people that would let me talk about what was happening in a real sense, and the people who were honest.
If you don't, this kind of reminds me of that theme of finding your voice, right? And hearing Lena say, like, there weren't that many people that I could talk to. So then you go, it's not the adults, so you go to your peers. Yeah. Yeah. Ellis, Anna, Vanya, what was COVID like for you?
For me, honestly, I felt like I was just finding, like London said, I was just finding myself. I was just finding a friend group I felt comfortable in, and I was finally like 7th grade, the year COVID started for me, was the year I finally put myself out there, decided to be more extroverted. I started focusing on school more in 7th grade. And then COVID hit, and then I just lost all motivation to do anything. And then there was outside tension in my house because of family issues. And this like packing us all in the same place really made it worse. So I didn't just feel alienated from my friends. I felt like alienated from my feelings, if that makes sense. I couldn't talk about anything. Because at the time, my parents weren't even supportive of like therapies or any. Yeah. And I'm kind of all over the place, but even with like world events, I felt like it was hidden from me. I felt like the only thing that I was like told to do is just stay inside, but I wasn't like exposed to the outside world. I wasn't exposed to like the racial injustice and stuff that was happening either, because again, everyone is just like, they viewed me like a little kid when it came to like seeing that stuff, but then when it came to having to be strong with my emotions, I was viewed like an adult, if that makes sense. Like my parents especially, they were like, well, we don't want you seeing people dying of COVID. We don't want you seeing people dying because of like just racism. We don't want you seeing people dying in general. Like there's like, but I couldn't talk about how I felt because they wanted me to be strong about my emotions. So it's like, I'm kind of all over the place again, but I felt like I had to be strong in one sense, not strong in the other. Like one sense I was an adult, and in one sense I was a baby, and it made me feel really confused, honestly. And then also with like the challenge of adolescence and like growing, it made it even more confusing. I didn't know what was going on, and even now I'm trying to find myself. It's it's been tough. And then even in terms of school, I started like ditching my assignments. I started failing my classes. All the stress put on by COVID plus just stuff going on in my family. It was a lot at once, and then it was all enhanced by like feeling isolated. It sucked. It was weird.
Wow. I'm glad that you expressed that confusion, because that's what a lot of adults are feeling too. We were in a period of trying to figure everything out. to the point you also brought up, having family issues while also being forced to quarantine. So now those issues are kind of like right in your face, right? And you got to deal with them day to day. That lack of motivation, talking about how am I going to do my schoolwork, and the world's kind of falling apart, right? And it's kind of weird going back to school and they're like, you know, this assignment is due or these projects are coming up, and it's hard to think about those things. So Ellis, did you want to share anything about your COVID experience?
Yeah. Kind of felt like trapped at home inside my room like every day. Like, yeah, I had to stay in my room until like the whole day is over. I mean, like, till like all my classes are done. Now I gotta do homework. Then I had to I got after school math tutoring that I would go to, and if I was in school, I had to leave school then go there.
Mm-hmm. And that math tutoring he's referring to is called Kumon, which is like academic enrichment. So you already have your 8 hours of school, and then now you have to do a little bit more school, exactly, for another 45 minutes to an hour on top of this thing, and then talk about being an athlete as well. That also added a little bit to your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Oh, nephew, what sport do you play?
Baseball.
Yeah.
How did you do baseball during COVID?
Well, we actually took a break, but we were just doing practices. We didn't have any games. We were just doing all practices.
Which is the whole thing. Like when you're trained to compete and there's no competition.
Right.
You're just practicing. That's weird, right?
Yeah.
You said something, Ellis. I want to ask you to say a little bit more, because I don't think people really understand what this would feel like. You're a student. You're used to changing classes all the time, and you sitting with people for lunch, and you ride in the bus, or you walking somewhere or something like that. And you said something that stands out to me. You said, I spent all day in my room. Like I'm in one spot all day. Talk to me about what that felt like. When is the point when that starts wearing on you? You know, where you're just like, I want to be anywhere but here, but then you can't go anywhere else.
Towards towards the end of the year, when I just really didn't want to do it anymore. I mean, I had really good grades, but I just didn't want to do anything. And then on top of that, we had almost at the end of the year, we had a science project and a history project, and they assigned them both on the same day.
2 final projects on the same day on top of everything.
That's
and what was also an adjustment for him, and we've talked about this before, is his day-to-day schedule was supposed to try to look normal, but you're social distancing all the time. And when a lot of other sports or other things just kind of canceled, baseball was one of those things, because it's an outside sport, that kind of kept going, right? They wanted to kind of keep them sharp for when things open back up. So his schedule was wake up, be in front of a computer for 8 hours, right? Go to academic enrichment, and then go to athletic practice, then come home and have little time for homework and sleep and the nutrition and all these things combined.
Nightmare.
Exactly. Headache.
Manya, what about you? What was COVID like for you?
It was pretty rough. It wasn't good at all, because I didn't have much motivation at all, which caused me to black out the entire year. I couldn't do the entire year. And not only that, my siblings, I had to make sure they were at their classes on time. So while dealing with my classes, I also had to deal with theirs, because my parents wouldn't be home. And I don't know, I felt really horrible, because one of the teachers said something about me to London, and that kind of shattered some of the motivation I ever had. And it was another teacher kicked me out of her Zoom class because I didn't know how to do something it was like, oh, so
You know what's standing out when you're saying this, when I'm hearing this, Vanya, is like how, and it's so frustrating to me with the kind of work that I do in the community, like when adults are really missing the mark and we're making things worse for y'all instead of better. You know, and we do that sometimes, like so frustrated. Like we have the opportunity where maybe you could talk to us, maybe we could hold space or whatever, but in a lot of cases we just make it worse. And so I want to do something really quickly because I want to do some spotlight stuff. I want to give a space for you, nephew and little nephew, to kind of just talk about how you try to, because like if you can't go to the people who you think you can go to, like who becomes your actual support system when stuff gets heavy, right? And so I would love to hear like a little bit of like what that looked like for the two of you. You know, like Ellis, what did it look like for you to try to then, did you talk to your big brother? Could you go to him? What things did you take to him? Were there some things you didn't feel comfortable taking to him? And then for you, nephew, like, were there things where you're watching, like, I know he's not okay, but I don't know how to talk to him about it. So I'd like to just give y'all a minute to kind of share some of that story. And then I want to spotlight Anna, Vanya, and London about how they ended up working through this through their friendship. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I guess I'll kind of start us off and then he'll kind of jump in. So what was different for our relationship from my lens, I can only say from my perspective, was trying to be that great older brother that's going to tell him that everything's okay, let him know like, all right, we're trying to figure these things out, you know, not to be scared and not to be afraid. When in the back of my mind, I'm also thinking about, well, how are we going to have these answers? How are we going to solve these problems related to COVID and the pandemic? And kind of just giving him, I wouldn't say like false hope, but just really trying to be brave for him if he felt scared in any way. What also added to that was that it felt a little bit like separation anxiety. So when he was younger, I'm sure he might bring this up, but like when I would leave for college, he would kind of cry a lot and look out the window as I'm driving off. And I think that kind of replicated that once the pandemic hit, because like I couldn't get to him if I wanted to. So it kind of amplified those feelings of separation anxiety. So how would you say our relationship was as far as like communicating or me being so far away and the pandemic going on?
It was kind of sad that he was far away. But I could FaceTime him. That was a good thing about the iPhone.
Yeah. We definitely FaceTimed a lot.
FaceTime a lot.
Yeah.
And it could help me when I didn't understand anything for my homework. Just check up on him and make sure he's all right. And that's it.
Gotcha. And I got to also commend him too, because I feel like he was more emotionally aware than I was. And it's something we kind of reference to a lot of this younger generation as that social emotional awareness. So after work, he would be the first one to call me in a lot of cases, or after school, or he'll send me a text, hey, how you doing? Just checking in on you. And I didn't realize how important those things were at the time. And I just want to say thank you. And I appreciate that for sure. He was definitely always looking out for me in the same way that I try to look out for him. So Ellis, during that time with us being so far apart and our relationship as brothers, what do you think you needed during the pandemic that I wasn't able to give to you?
Motivation and encouragement.
Okay.
That was something that I figured out in myself.
Nice.
That I was able to get through all my classes one by one, doing them all together.
Got you. So it was a lot different than me being able to walk into your room, check in on your homework and see how school going, versus you having to figure out how to do that within yourself and stay on track and stay motivated. Got you.
I'm curious about something. one of the things that has come up, I know, in some of my conversations with London was frustration. You kind of talked about this a little bit, nephew, and I'm interested, little nephew, if you saw this too with some of the other adults in your life. One of the things that London often shares with me that was frustrating for her was that the adults would look to her like a false sense of bravery. Like, well, you know, everything's going to be fine. And, you know, it's whatever. And she's like, this is bad. And it's like, and she almost felt like people were acting like it wasn't as bad as it really was. Teachers, you know, and other people acting like, well, it's bad, but it's like, if you're scared. And she would say, I would have rather them told me I'm afraid, or I don't know what we're doing, or I don't know what to do, than act like everything's cool.
Yep.
And Ellis, I'm interested in your perspective about like, how were teachers acting, parents, whatever, and you're like, are y'all acting like this is like we good, or like it's not normal, but everything's fine, it's under control, when it's clearly not? Like, she did not feel that she had security in any of the adults around her, and it made her feel like, I can't talk to y'all.
Yeah.
So how would you say the adults in your life were acting, as far as like teachers, even mom and dad, like them saying like everything's going to be okay, or were they trying to really be honest? How do you feel about your teachers and things like that?
Teachers was like, they didn't really care. They really didn't want to wear masks, and didn't want to get the vaccine. And mom and dad was making sure that we were safe, wearing masks, washing our hands daily, and talking to us about how bad it is and what the outcome may be. And
so that's two different perspectives. So you have on one end, our parents both work in the healthcare field, so they were very upfront and honest with us once the pandemic started happening, because they're in the hospital 12 hours a day, seeing these things happen, seeing loved ones come in and out of the hospital, and they're very ill because of the virus. And on the other hand, he has other teachers and adults trying to make the situation seem like it's not as bad. And I feel like that could be exactly. So even though it's very bad, that could be like very confusing. And so how did that make you feel when like adults started to act that way? So for example, we got mom and dad being honest with us, but how did you feel about other adults not taking it as seriously?
Mad.
Okay.
I mean, like, millions of people died that year off of one virus.
Yeah. Yep.
They're in the hospital and can't leave or can't see anybody.
Yep.
Laying in the bed by themselves.
Got you. Yep. And I think we're going to also touch on that too, how everyone handled grief and handled these different loss of loved ones and feeling isolated and things like that. So what do you think was helpful about our relationship during that time as well?
Making sure you tell your loved ones that you love them.
Gotcha.
Every day.
Got it.
I love y'all. That makes me feel good. I mean, because I'm thinking too, and you know what I'm thinking about when I'm listening to y'all, nephews, I'm thinking about my sister and me. And I'm thinking about how there are some times when it's interesting when crisis happens, especially when you're younger, you go not to necessarily the most logical people, you go to who makes you feel safe.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I hear in all this is like, with all of these adults around, the person who made him feel safe was his brother. Right.
And what's so interesting balancing that too is, for me, the dynamic of not trying to be a parent and shield him from all these emotions, but also be a brother and just be there for him as like a friend. That was like a weird, interesting dynamic for me as well. Now that I reflect on the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a lot of adults, when they give that false bravery, is I'm afraid of how the youth might react to the truth, when in all honesty, telling them the truth is probably the better option. So
or the truth that we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't want to seem like we don't know, because a lot of times that might lower the pedestal or the authority that we might have in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to really learn how to be more of a brother and not so much of a shielding parent.
Yeah. And, you know, I brought Anna and Vanya and London back in because one of the things this makes me think about, and I want to ask this question with all of them on camera, and then I'm going to go back and so that we can highlight theirs. But I'm curious, this, when you're saying this makes me think about, London brought this up before we came into the studio, and that was about like, these cross-generational relationships are a little bit of a hot mess, right? Like the people who are supposed to be like, this is a wise person for you to go to. Like, I'm thinking nephew for you and me, we probably thought like, oh, my, grandparents or whatever. I don't think now, grandparents don't look like the wise ones. The parents sometimes at times can be the least understanding. Right? They're not necessarily the people who are like, when I need to feel protection or understood or warmth or whatever. Right now, I don't know that means the elders or your parents or whatever. And I'm curious for y'all about like, what does it feel like? Like how would you describe what your relationships are like with adults right now? Whether it's family members, aunts, uncles, parents, teachers, like what are y'all's relationships like with adults right now?
Okay, my relationship with my parents, honestly, okay, backstory, my grandpa passed away from COVID and my brother also recently passed away, and I feel like I can't talk to them because they're always like, well, this is how it was for me, and they never hear out like my side and how I feel. They're just like, well, this is how it is for me. I mean, if you don't feel the same, I don't know what to tell you. And even with like older people, like even my grandmother, when I try to talk about my grandpa's passing, she's just like, I feel like nobody understands me, and I don't have a sibling to go to. My brother was special needs. It was always nice to play with him, but he couldn't talk. And I just like, my main struggle is I don't have anyone in my house to go to. I don't have anyone my age. So honestly, a lot of the time I do go to Vanya and Lennon. They're always like the first people I tell about everything. And we went a long period of time without talking because I just fell into this depression. And then I felt like I didn't want to burden anybody with my problems. But I feel like I can't go to anybody in my house about this. Even my parents, my mom is like, she's open to mental health, but she's not as open as she could be. And my dad isn't really, and then my grandma isn't really. And it's like everyone that I have that's family that's like so close to me, I can't tell them about it. So for me, it just feels like I have a different experience than these people. They're older, they view things differently. Also, culture ties into part of it. Macedonian people are never really that open about mental health. They view it as like a shameful thing. Like there's one word, nervosna. It's like they view it as like you're crazy. That's what that word means basically. And it's just like, again, it makes me feel like I can't go to anybody in my house. And when I do go to people, it's pretty much always my friends. Even with a therapist, I feel like I can't go to them because then my mom is gonna ask them, "What's this about? Like, what's happening with Anna? Like, can I know about my daughter?" And it's just like I feel like I don't have privacy, and then I feel like if I tell one parent something, the other is gonna know, and like vice versa. And then I feel like with my grandma, I'm just gonna judge. It's like my friends are really the only people I feel like I can be open about stuff to. Honestly, I rambled a little bit. Yeah.
No, that was not rambling. We understood perfectly. Vanya, London, how do you feel about like, and Ellis, like, how are you looking at the adults in your lives?
What Anna said was so profound because it's like, I think it's a beautiful thing about found family because I think in some sort of way I can relate to in the beginning of COVID when my grades started decreasing rapidly, even from my dad, I would receive comments when I would try to describe the serious problems I was having with my mental health and vice versa and whatnot. This whole struggle with like navigating my mental health and not it being the first time I was going through depression and all these other sensitive topics. I think when I tried to describe it to him, instead of hearing comforting words, I would hear like, I understand, or something like that, what I was expecting. I instead received something where instead of being validated, I was not. I was told that mental health was not an excuse to not be caught up with my grades and everything. And this was in the beginning of COVID when everything just started erupting. And I think even before COVID, I think it was very difficult for me to navigate relationships with adults. I didn't understand them. They didn't understand me. I think a lot of times adults in my life thought I was this eccentric little child that they did not get at all. And I think in that sense, I'd just been always like having that sort of relationship with adults in my life. I naturally developed a better kind of relationship with people my age. And I think, especially during COVID, I think found family and peers and stuff was a beautiful thing for me to have access to. Before the times when I would recognize that I had ADHD and other struggling, I was struggling with other mental health issues. I think in some areas where adults either did not experience it or were not comfortable being vulnerable with those kind of topics and letting it sit there, I think being able to have people my age just understand me. And sometimes it wasn't even understanding me, but just sitting with me, accepting me for who I am, because the adults, some blood related to me, would not accept these parts of me as me, but just see it as weird and eccentric. But having my found family kind of accept this natural version of me, letting me be my weird, authentic self, I think that's what would help me navigate through my difficult era during COVID. And yeah, I'd say having friends and just a generation who is very comfortable with the concept of neurodivergent people. I think that's what kept me comfortable, at least when adults couldn't be.
Thank you for that line. Ellis, Vanya, how do you feel like how do you feel like your relationship or your connection is with some of the adults in your life, whether it's family, teachers? How do you feel like you can open up? Do you feel like they understand you? Can you talk with them?
I feel like most of the time I don't think I can, cause like, you know, like I love my parents, but you know I don't really think they like fully believe in like mental health, which causes me to not be able to tell them anything like at all. So my mom, she has like she has anxiety, and she doesn't want me to like get tested for anything because she thinks I'll be hooked on drugs. But I only went to her like a few times to like talk about things, and like she's had a rough life. I It's not the same as hers, but it's rough too. Like I just feel like I wish I could talk to her and my dad, but I can't talk to any teachers either, like as much. Definitely not. I don't know. Like last year, um, there was one, not last year, but like ninth grade. there was a teacher that like, you know, advocated for mental health and stuff, but when I actually went to him about, you know, not having like any motivation, like feeling like I can't do anything like at all, he just kind of shut me out and was like, that's not an excuse. So I just kind of didn't go back to any teachers after that.
One thing I didn't want to interrupt, but one thing I do completely understand is my mom, even though she may be like more open to therapy, she's the same way. She does not want me to take any medication. She's like, well, you're 15. If you need it not to be happy, how long are you need down the road? It's like, I got that part, and then my face lit up. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one.
So a common theme that I'm hearing amongst what you guys have been saying is like a combination of parents being invasive, but also not being willing to listen and hear and understand you at the same time. So in some areas, they want to know everything about you, but then in other areas, they don't want to be there to listen when you need them the most. And I think that's a very interesting thing that you guys are bringing up. And I'm glad that we're giving you this platform to express those things. So as far as you, Ellis, what would you say was your relationship with mom and then your relationship with dad? Because I think we kind of lump them together sometimes, but you have those kind of genuine connections between the two separately. So what would you say is your connection with mom?
My connection with mom is actually pretty strong.
Okay.
She talks to me about things in life, like because I'm going to high school now, like about like parties and stuff, like a life.
Yeah. And how to like carry yourself in different situations. Okay. And that's good that has evolved into that. Do you feel like you were always able to like be yourself and express yourself to mom all the time, or was it some areas where it wasn't like that?
No, it's not really like that. I always really tell her that I'm doing good, but sometimes I really don't.
Okay. So you don't feel like you can tell her the truth sometimes?
Yeah.
And why is that?
I don't know, because she might not.
Because I can kind of say what I see from outside looking in. Right. So for what I've seen sometimes is that mom gets into what I call mom mode and starts to look at like being solution oriented and just trying to figure everything out. And doesn't really give you an opportunity to really share like how you feel sometimes. And immediately just starts trying to be there for you and nurture you and things like that. So, and then how would you say the relationship with dad is right now?
It's actually pretty good. He's like a leader.
Okay, so you see dad as a leader. Okay.
Teaches me things to do as a man. Person to talk to about different things, about puberty, all that stuff.
Do you feel more comfortable talking to dad about certain things as a young man, or do you feel more comfortable talking to mom about certain things? Like, do you feel like you only can talk to him about certain things? And then speak up a little bit.
I only talk to dad about things.
Okay.
Because I don't think mama really understand.
Got you. So you feel like as him being a male figure, sometimes it helps, and he can better understand you sometimes.
Yes.
Okay.
So I want to, there's something that's emerging, in this, where it's just like, who and where are the circles where we can be completely transparent? I want to give a highlight to London, Vanya, and Anna about how they navigated all of this, because I'm hearing like, and I know too, as the parent on here, I know that we've had times, London and I were, although we're really close, there are some times when she's like, she and her sister will say like, oh, you're being like therapist mom right now, and I just want to talk. And in those moments, she's not looking for me, even though we're close. She is looking for Vanya and Anna. So I would like to hear from them about like, when in these moments when you can't talk to your parents, like what is it that you get from each other? How are you talking with each other? So I want to give y'all just a second so I can just, because I would love to understand. And in full transparency, let me say this, and I mentioned this to y'all before, so y'all know I'm telling the truth because I said this before. I'm a full grown woman, and I don't think I ever, even with my great friends, I don't think I had the kind of friendship that y'all have with each other, particularly not at 15. I had not seen anything like that when I was 15. So I'm just curious about, like, what do you think is this thing that y'all have in your friendship? London, you use the phrase found family, right? Nephew, sometimes we've used the phrase chosen family, right? And so I'm just curious about, for Devon and Ellis, y'all are actually related. Y'all are brothers, right? But like for Anna, Vanya, and London, y'all found each other. And the diversity, right? Like we've got Black, Mexican, and Macedonian. Family structures are very, very different. All kinds of different ways of seeing the world, and yet this is family. And so I just wanted to take a second and just hear y'all kind of explain to not just us, but just like all the people who are going to watch this podcast, what is it in y'all's friendship that y'all have here that you don't get from some of the people who are supposed to be your adult support system?
Okay. I think it'd be cool if we all unmuted and like had like a conversation, because we've talked about this so often. Like
at multiple
me and London
sleepovers.
had a conversation about this one time. And with London and Vanya, I just feel like we're so different that talking to each other helps us understand everyone, and also like it helps me grow my mindset and mature kind of.
Some of the problem with like my family and like adults was like, a lot of times people see like smart little children and they're like, oh, you're just like a little adult and you're very smart and you're so grown up. But it's like I never got to be a kid. It's like I skipped childhood to be like this adult. Like,
oh, you're born.
Oh yeah, so eloquent, and you have such a big vocabulary. You're so grown up, and I never got to be like
such a little Mitski lyric.
Being a kid in like the gifted program felt like that, and I feel like with Vanya and London, I really do feel like my inner child is found, because I can be humorous with them, and I can also talk about things that I never got to talk about when I was little, like my feelings and stuff. I mean, I don't know how to exactly put it, but with them, I get every aspect of like with Vanya in London, I can go from like crying to laughing in 2 seconds. I mean, I remember one big turning point in our friendship is we had a deep conversation in my basement at like 6 a.m. on New Year's, and it's just like, it was about how we feel like we could go to each other. And then from then on, we've just been talking more and more about our feelings. And that's just something I've never been able to get with any adult, because with my mom, again, her response is immediately get angry, look at my phone, find out if I'm the cause of the issue. But with Vanya and London, it's like they just hear me out and they trust me on stuff. And like, I do get that with other friends, but I don't want to say it's just like my platonic soulmates, because in all reality, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think what's profound about us is that, and I'm stealing this quote, with these two, I don't have to be something. I don't have to be this smart kid. I don't have to be silly. I don't have to be serious. I'm just me. I'm just London. I'm not some girl. I'm not the teenager. I'm just being myself with people that have made this space to make me feel comfortable to just exist. And just, I think it's a lot of times it's like difficult to like, I think it's very like people underestimate how difficult it is to like just exist and be yourself. A lot of time you have to have your guard up so that you don't have to struggle with like other people like perceiving you a certain way, and you don't want the smoke or something like that. But I remember there was like, and I'm sure you two remember this, we spent like New Year's together one night.
That was the best.
And it was a sleepover, and we didn't sleep at all because we spent the whole night, and it was such a different night, and it really helped us grow our friendship. We just spent the whole night opening up to each other, talking about how much we love each other, and being vulnerable, which like I think is stigma with teenagers, is like, oh, you can't. Being vulnerable is really weird and gross, and being clingy is nasty. But it's like, just we spend the whole night being vulnerable, talking about things we've never told people, and like just being open with how much we loved each other. And I think that was one of the best memories I've had in general, but just I've had with these two. I think they were always there when I was struggling. I can never say in like my most darkest moments that none of these two were like there for me, supporting me and helping me get through my stuff.
I have something to add to that because after my brother passed away, after my grandpa passed away, I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone in general. Like I felt like it was just like that was just such a big burden in my life. I didn't want to go to anyone. So there was like a 2-month period where with London and Vanya, I barely talked to them. I didn't have the motivation to have friends. Okay. And then that sleepover felt like a big turning point because we were always close, obviously, but they're just the most understanding two individuals I think I might have ever met because I told them how I feel and I told them I'm so sorry. I never wanted to bring it up. I felt bad about it, that I didn't really talk to you guys. And they always understood. Like, they understood like my struggles. And even though they haven't gone through it, they haven't experienced exactly what I have. We've all experienced things differently. You can't compare stuff like that. You know, they were there, like, and they are some of the two people I know that actually understood, like, that I needed someone to be there and I didn't know how to ask. And it's like, that sleepover was such a big turning point because they never judged me. They've never, I mean, I talk a lot. I talk loud. I talk about my feelings. I make jokes when I shouldn't. I do a lot of different things that a lot of people, it turns them away from me. I mean, I've had friends call me annoying in the past. Bonnie and London are never like that. Even with my mental health, they're really open with me. It's just like, again, I've never found somebody who has done that for me. Like no one who has wanted to put in that effort. And then
that's because nobody messes with
nobody
us.
messes with my pookie.
Nobody's ruining this for us.
But with you guys, I just honestly, like, I feel like even at my lowest point, you're understanding enough to where it's like you can accept that I'm not doing well, and then you accept that I need a mental break. Like, if I need a break from something, you guys don't get mad at me, and you're not questioning our friendship over it. Like, you're there for me, and, you know, I mean, Vonnie and London, again, they're some of the first people I tell about everything. Like, when my brother passed away, I think they were, like, the 4th, 5th people I told about.
You know, there's this Black person, this Macedonian person, and this Mexican person.
Yeah.
What was interesting, especially about that one night on New Year's, was that we were talking, and I think you and Vanya had like a lot of like you two have like a lot of things you can relate to that
we have a lot
I can't, and I'm like, I'm Black. I'm just here, but like there's like a lot of stuff.
There's like a lot of
parents are like from different countries. So.
Yeah, your cultures are like very like in your lives and stuff.
Oh, I have a lot to say about that actually. Not here right now, but like, you know.
You know what? It's so important.
Vanya, is that night, like, I really realized, like, I'm not alone. Like, I've been feeling this all my life where I'm stuck in my culture and I'm stuck in feeling like I have to be traditional. I have to be like this perfect woman. I can't be myself. I can't talk about my gender. I can't talk about like how like different dynamics in the home. I can't, like, with my grandma, I felt like she used to live with me. I felt forced to clean. I felt forced to look pretty. I felt forced to dress pretty. I felt forced to like be this perfect idea of a Macedonian woman. And then I talked to Vanya about that night, and it's like, a beautiful thing is we did really relate on that, like, culture wise, and I didn't know anyone else felt the same way. And even like, we all 3 of us come from very different backgrounds, but we all relate on different things. Like, there's always like some similarities we all have, and I think that's really beautiful. I mean, like, I'm rambling, but we all like, we share something, and I feel like I wouldn't have found that if we weren't as open with each other. And
Yeah.
that's why I haven't found that in other friendships. Because with you guys, I tell you everything, you tell me everything, and then we find similarities from there. With other friendships, I feel like the people don't trust me enough. I don't trust them enough to tell them everything. So I don't find similarities like this with other people. But with you guys, I just like it clicks. It's really nice. It makes me feel. I feel at home, and even with you guys' families. London, your mom and your sister are two amazing people. I love them very much. Vanya, your parents are like second parents to me. Like same with like London's mom. Like, and then even with Vanya's siblings, I feel like they're like my cousins or something. Like I feel with both of you guys that like you make me feel so accepted to a point where I haven't felt like someone has liked me or loved me this much before. You know, I feel like I'm in your families and like it's sweet.
That's a flex.
Yeah.
So this is a great, I think, opportunity. By the way, y'all just all make me smile so much. And this is absolutely an example of how like every single face on the screen, we just forced all of us into like family, right? We just became one, like chosen family, a found family. There was something that came up, and I want to kind of give us space to talk about this too. Unique parts of our identity, right? So like Ellis and Devon, nephew and little nephew, I would really like your voices on what it's like to be young and younger Black men right now. And Vanya, I would love your perspective on what is it like with all of this, that you're experiencing at 15. And then on top of that, lay on top of that, a very rich Mexican culture in your household. And then, when I'm listening, right, to Anna talk about their experience, right? And they're literally talking about how, families like, here's how you be a good Macedonian woman. And I'm looking at even I'm thinking about like they them pronoun, and it's just like, here's how you are to be a good Macedonian woman. And it's like, what does that mean? So I would love, and London, not that I'm leaving you out per se, but I would love your perspectives on what is that like from nationality, and then, like I said, nephew and little nephew, from being men. And a lot of the folks, not all, but a lot of the people we've been seeing dying on social media look just like y'all.
Yep.
So I'd be curious for all of you for your perspectives on folding that in to this conversation too, and being young and having to like carry all that. And to all of your points, first of all, there's no such thing as normal. But then, I mean, and y'all said it so eloquently and so perfectly, like, you want me to be a kid over here and you want me to be a grown-up over here. What do you want from, like, I don't have this figured out, but sometimes you want me to be really, really mature and I have no idea what this looks like. And I'm trying to navigate all of these identities at the same time. So I want to, however y'all want to go, but Vanya, I would love to bring you in about heritage, and nephew and little nephew, I'd love to bring you in and talking about, what it's like to try to navigate that in these, these racialized Black gendered bodies.
I guess I'll go ahead. What I'll say is that this is one of the few key spaces where I've actually had an opportunity to even talk about these things. Within male culture, therapy, talking about emotions and mental health is not a very popular thing. Hopefully that's starting to change in more recent times, but that's always kind of been the thing. And then when you add the layer of Black culture on top of that, that's a whole nother thing where it's like you don't really talk about those things, or you're perceived a certain way. And it's not always well received. To that point, I reflect a lot about during the pandemic, a lot of those instances of Black Lives Matters situations going on were kind of like right in our faces. You're sitting at home and all you can really do is kind of tune in through social media or through the news, or through some type of media outlet, and it's just like always in your face. Breaking news, such and such has passed away because of this violence. Breaking news. And then to have all these different individuals look like us was a whole nother layer. So I don't know. To be honest, as an adult, I'm still processing it. I'm still trying to understand what that looks like and how to go day to day, knowing that that could have been me in terms of the way that person looks, that age, sometimes even geographically where that was. Like, wow, I'm only this many cities away. That could have happened to me in this time. So, yeah. So, Ellis, what would you say it was like for you to learn about these different things? Because I remember when you called me about the George Floyd situation and you started to hear about other things. And what Ellis would do is his outlet was just saying, like, he would update me, but that was kind of like opening the space to like, how am I supposed to process this? Did you hear about X, Y, and Z happening? So what was that like for you, hearing about those instances?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
Like, especially with the George Floyd, with the knee on his neck.
Yeah, speak up, Mark. Yeah.
Like he was begging the police officer to stop, and he didn't stop. Then other people who was trying to record the cop doing that told him to stop, and then they tried like to pull him, and he still tried to put his knee on his neck.
Yeah. So now you have that visual to go along with the incident. The whole incident, it's already terrible enough. I mean, if you just read it in a paragraph, like this happened to a person, you already feel that that sadness within you, but then to see the visual to go along with it. And it was very difficult for me to kind of explain and process that for him because one, he's young, but also how do you try to normalize that it's happening so consistently? And also teaching him that this isn't something that's supposed to happen to people that look like us either.
Yeah, that's, and again, this reminds me of something that we were talking about before we came on to, and it's just like, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and it's like, it's not normal. And we're seeing it a lot, and it's not normal. And like, what does that look like? How do we experience it? I'm pivoting a little bit. Vanya, I want to come to you. I heard Anna say something in their conversation about like, during COVID, I'm shielded from a lot of these other crazy things that are even happening and not getting to experience it. But I also want to note that like, because we have some Mexican family members, and there were some things that I was completely oblivious to until I was related to Mexican people who were going through all kinds of things that were flying completely under the radar. And I'm like, wow, we're not even talking about this.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because I won't say it like this because I think it's really difficult to sometimes say, no, I still have culture. It's sometimes so hard to like remember that, London, you still have culture. Don't forget that. But I think it was interesting to observe like having my two friends in this friend group, and they have like this very like significant culture for them. It's like it's everything, like it's there. And I think it was interesting to see because in a lot of times a thing we like often talk about in our friend group is like how there's a lot of similarities for their cultures, whether it be the religions like within their culture and stuff like that. And I think it was just very interesting to observe and sit with because it's something that, a normal like school system would never teach me. And a lot of times I would learn things about culture and like being more respectful and stuff. Thanks to these two being more open and stuff. I got to try more stuff and be more open-minded about cultures and different cultures and stuff because of them. Like, I'm feeling great. I got to try like Macedonian like food. I get to participate in a quince. I get to participate in a quince as a dama. This is great, and I think it's interesting to witness this, but also it makes me very happy to be involved and get to really understand culture firsthand, and it makes me very happy to like have these resources like in real life.
And this is like part of the good news that we also need to talk about, right? Like, I want to highlight, by the way, in case y'all weren't listening, for folks who are going to be watching this later on or listening to this, keep in mind when you heard Ellis talking about his story, he said he had good grades, friends. Playing sports, doing all the things, good grades. Yeah, there was some heaviness there, but there's good news. I just want to highlight that, like, sometimes we're talking about funky stuff and there's still good things happening in the shadows.
Yeah, and what was interesting for me, Kim, because I'm studying educational psychology, so I'm studying how the brain works, right? And for him to have been diagnosed with ADHD and to actually thrive in this environment kind of set off a lot of light bulbs to me, because he said that with the distance learning, he's able to just, it's almost like a one-on-one between him and his content. Whereas in the classrooms, you have your friends who want to talk to you and play around. You have the teachers going on. You have all these other things going on. So that was a very positive thing that I was able to take from that, in spite of all the other things going on.
So, I'm Mexican, which means like, I kind of have to like, do certain things, like pray to a certain religion, wear certain clothes if I was in like a different place. But I'm like, in America. I was like, since I was raised here, I didn't really get to like experience a lot of my culture or heritage. So I just, I was never like really fully connected with it. And even now, like since I'm having a quince, which is like a celebration for, a 15-year-old girl, a Hispanic 15-year-old girl, turning into a woman or becoming a woman, I still feel like, I'm not, Hispanic enough. I'm not Mexican enough. I don't do this enough. I don't look like that. I don't, fit into a stereotype as well as the others, which makes me like, very insecure when talking about like, my heritage and culture. Like, a lot of Latina and Hispanic women are kind of like stereotyped to be like rude, mean, and like curvy. And I don't look like any of that. And, listen to a lot of Spanish music. I don't look like any of that, listen to any of that, or not often. But, that happens. Like they're stereotyped to like be like that. And then when somebody, I think when somebody sees me and they're like, she's Mexican, but she doesn't look like this type of Mexican. So they're probably not, they're probably not like, that. And, it makes me feel like very whitewashed. Even now with the quince, I think, am I Mexican enough to have one? Like, am I connected enough to have a quince like this? Because I don't have many Hispanic friends. I have a hard time making friends with them. And, I don't talk to many of my relatives since most of them live in Mexico. When I went there twice, I think. When I went there, I knew how differently, my life was compared to theirs. It was like really hard as like growing up and feeling like every time I looked in the mirror, I looked at myself, I was like, I'm not Mexican enough because I don't look like this. I'm not Mexican enough because, I don't look like these ladies. I don't sound like these ladies. I don't act like these ladies. There must be something wrong with me then, because I'm not, And there's also like a lot of stereotyping with like, guys being like Hispanic fathers being like very abusive to their wives, which is like completely wrong. Like, yeah, it happens in some households, but not all of them. And it's like really, kind of hard.
And I think what you just shared with us, Vanya, is so important because it really is on par with our theme of finding your voice, especially in a cultural sense, because I feel like a lot of times we take on our cultural expectations. and we feel like we have to look and act a certain way based on what our culture is telling us, or trying to lay out a model of what we're supposed to look like. So thank you so much for sharing that. We definitely appreciate it.
So we're actually going to get ready to kind of pull this together, although I have to be completely honest with y'all. There is so much in here, like so much juicy stuff we've been talking about. Like, I want to go 500 different directions, and we're already probably past how much time we should have been. But I want to talk more. But anyway, so 2 questions as we're starting to wrap up. 2 questions. The first one that I'd like to hear from everyone on is this. What is, especially too, in thinking about, like, we really, like, y'all, I really just want adults to step up. It's so frustrating for me, you know, hearing like y'all are going through all of these things. And I'm like, we could make it at least, if not better, at least not worse, by trying to either put you in a box, tell you what you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to sound, what you're supposed to look like, what you're supposed to be doing. We don't give you choices. Like, just having a choice about how you want to show up, or like, you get to decide what it looks like. You get to decide how, you know, how you tell your story, what your story looks like. And we're not letting you do that. And it's so frustrating for me. And I'm guilty of it sometimes too, you know, where I'm just like, you know, I missed that moment. I missed that opportunity to do a better job, right? Like, you know, I don't want to get it wrong if I pronounce a name wrong, or misgender a person, or get the story wrong. It's like, please tell me so that I can do better. Like, I don't want to avoid the thing. I want to know, you know, so that I do better, because I want to be able to see you. You know, I talk a lot about this word. The word is sababona. London knows, she's heard this a bazillion times. I see you, but in a deeper way. And I really hope, my wish, my hope, and my prayer, and my manifestation is that adults will really pause to start seeing our young people. Y'all are so freaking brilliant and so complex and complicated. And if we get in your way, we're going to mess up some really dope things that are supposed to happen that comes from you. So if in thinking, nephew, about this whole concept of finding your voice, right? And thinking about this whole concept of about finding y'all's voice, I would be curious for you, Ellis, Vanya, Anna, London, if there was something that you could say to adults, like if you had, and in fact, when you do this, I'm going to give y'all like a spotlight. So if you're just like, this is what I want to say to adults, I'm going to take everybody off the screen so you can say your message about what you need to say to adults. What would you say if you're just like, I'm not going to get in trouble for this, but this is what you need to know? What would you say? What would you tell us? So whoever wants to go first, just let me know when you're like, I want the mic, and give me a second so I can take everybody else off and highlight you. And then y'all let me know who's next.
One thing I really think I want to not confront adults with, but just kind of really set the room for, is asking them what their phobia with vulnerability is rooted in. And I'm not sure if it's a thing where they're completely kind of like in the know about. I'm not sure it has to be a thing where they're fully like they're conscious with, if they know of it. Or I know it's not intentional sometimes, but I think there's a lot of times where adults have this fear of like seeming weak, or like, you know, out of fear for either being put in the same like position as the people they're supposed to lead, or if they're scared to just like show what the actual state of like the atmosphere of life can seem like. And it's interesting because I think adults, not even adults, just people you look up to, could be scared because I think once they get the impression that they're a life guide, they're helping guide younger people who look up to them, making sure they're safe and good and all that. I think a lot of the time, I think it really like goes like over the head and miss a signal where it's like, I like understand that sometimes in order to make this person like have trust in me, have faith in me. Sometimes what needs to be done is showing that I don't know, I don't understand, because only when people are able to be vulnerable about not knowing or understanding can we move on to the next step. And that's one thing I wanted to really compliment my mom on. I think, I think getting pronouns correct, pronouncing someone's name is something that you definitely have to be conscious about. When you're able to be conscious of that step in the first place, realize you need to improve on that, I think that's already making progress in the right direction. Being able to understand that you still need to communicate better, but when you don't understand that you need to communicate, finding the root of why, I think, is something that I think will not only help adults with their relationships in general, but generations worth of issues going on. When you're able to start the conversation of why you're scared, where you think it might have come from, and even not that, but trying to do better, take the initiative to, then that's when you can kind of do better, not only for the sake of your relationships, but for yourself, instead knowing that you're trying to do better.
So I don't like when parents yell at me because it makes me mad sometimes. It makes me not want to talk to them or express my feelings of how I feel, and how what they say and things that they say make me mad sometimes, and just don't want to listen to what they have to say. So that's it.
One of my main things is, if you can't relate to an experience, just be there, because a lot of the times with the grief, I do have PTSD from my brother passing away, and at that time I didn't need someone to relate to me. I just needed someone to be there. And also, this is unrelated to the grief and stuff, but when I get in trouble with my mom for doing something, I need to express my side of the story, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's like, I'm not the type of person where it's like, I can't just, I don't want to say drop something because that makes it sound bad, but I can't just I want to try to make things better before immediately ending it, you know? I just wish parents were more understanding with my emotions. I wish I could talk to them and they could treat me like how Vanya or how London treat me, where it's like they listen, they give me advice, but they don't force their opinion on me. Whether even with grades, even with just how I present myself socially, even with just mental health in general. I feel like I have to fit their idea of it or else it's wrong, but I just need time to build I need to be my own person. I can't have someone constantly be being mad at me, grounding me too, when I need to figure it out on my own sometimes. And even with other adults in my life, like my grandma, again, it's a cultural thing. I can't talk to her about my mental health. I can't even talk to my dad about my mental health, since my parents are from Macedonia. They still are stuck in this they're stuck in this mindset, and I feel like I can't go to anyone, because with my mom I'm gonna get in trouble. With my dad and my grandma, I'm gonna get berated for being nervous, crazy, anxious. It's just it's a lot, honestly. And I wish I had someone in my family that understood. I wish I had my parents that understood, and I wish I also didn't have to fit this ideal type of person, whether it's based on culture or just their own beliefs, their own morals. I wish I didn't have to be that type of person. And my main thing I'm trying to get to adults, my main point is, I wish they would hear me out and let me talk for once, because I don't want to disrespect an adult, but just because you're older than me does not mean it doesn't mean I'm not my own person.
There's not much I can say, but I just I don't want to get in trouble for asking for help, or asking to get to or just coming out too. I don't want to get in trouble for any of those. It's not very accepted in my culture or my religion, which is hard, because I'm bisexual and stuff. Yeah. I don't want to get in trouble for any of those. my like if I ask my parents for, you know, help, my brother and I, we've tried asking for help, but you know, my mom again, she's like, I don't want you to get hooked on drugs. I'm like, you know, or you know, I don't like my dad, I love him, but I don't think he really believes in like mental health. And you know, if he knew that like one or two of his children were like struggling, then you know, probably wouldn't accept it as much as my mom would. Like I've had to leave school a number of times because of panic attacks, and you know, I don't want to get yelled at when I call my mom and I'm like, you know, I can't stay in here, you know, I'm too anxious, I can't do this, I can't focus, I can't, like my mind isn't straight, and if I'm in here any longer it might get worse. I don't like I think sometimes she may be thinking that I'm just faking it. Sometimes I think I just may be faking it instead, and that it's probably not real. But you know, that's that's all I really had to say. Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting, you know, and we're talking about mental wellness or whatever, and then I want to hear from you. But one of the things that I think is so interesting about this topic is in this framework of mental health as it relates to our young people, we heard that mental health is scary, that it's fearful. We heard that it's not an excuse. We heard that it's not real. We heard that it's shameful. And yet here we are experiencing this thing. And it's like one of the ways that for all of us that we experience wellness is to be in community. So I would love to hear your thoughts on it, because this was so profound for me. I'm just sitting here reflecting.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a phenomenal conversation, first off. And one of the biggest things that I'm taking from this right now is that there's a bigger need for multi-generational conversations. We need to have more of these opportunities where these different generations are talking and just really understanding each other. I think we exist and we are in close vicinity with one another, but we don't take the time to really listen and hear each other out. And that's one of the biggest things that I'm definitely taking from this conversation. Mental health and mental wellness is very real, and it's something that should be taken seriously by everyone. It's something that we should definitely promote and really step into that vulnerability. I think a lot of people some of the things that I'm hearing from these conversations is a hesitance, feeling a little bit of fear in expressing yourself, or not having that person that you know is going to be receptive. A lot of times you're kind of stepping out on a whim, hoping that if I say something, are they going to judge me for this? And I think we do need to get rid of that judgmental stigma, that judgmental attitude, and really be open to understanding how everyone's feeling.
Can I just say, as we get ready to close, again, and nephew, remind everybody what our whole theme for the whole year is?
Finding your voice.
Yes.
Finding your voice.
Finding your voice. So I would just want to thank everybody. Like, I'm just in awe of how brilliant y'all are. And I'm also thinking too, and I don't know if you're thinking about this, nephew, I'm thinking like how very possible it is that I'm going to look back on this footage 10 years from now and be like, we were talking with them before they figured out exactly who they were.
Yes.
And they're going to go and do these amazing things. Like, I have complete confidence that Anna's going to do something amazing. I have complete confidence that Vanya is going to do something wonderful. I have complete confidence that Ellis is going to be really dope. I don't even know what. I'm just expecting that. Mm-hmm. I know that London Hollis is going to do something amazing that's going to blow my mind, right? And I'm sitting here listening to y'all, and y'all have complete control and power over your stories.
Yes.
You executed excellently in just talking about who you are when we get out of your way.
And Auntie, imagine if we matched the amount of negative expectations with the amount of positive expectations. Just trying to think about that for a second. Like, what if we really thought like I don't need to worry about this guy right here because I know he's going to be okay. I don't need to necessarily shield him because I trust that he's going to make the right decisions. I trust that he's going to be able to learn and develop. And the same thing with all of you that are on this screen. I think we do need to project more positive expectations as we move forward with more of these multi-generational conversations.
Mm-hmm. So we're getting ready to tune out, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you. Y'all are amazing human beings. Thank you so much. And I mentioned this word, and I want to say it again in here because it's the truth. Sawubona. I see you. I see you. I affirm every single thing that you're experiencing. They are real experiences, and y'all are dope. So even when this podcast ends, I just on camera just want to say, like, if there's ever any way I can support or continue to support Whole Space, please let us know. And that even means sometimes, if we're just supposed to listen, sometimes we need to know, like, I don't need you to solve this problem. Just listen. And sometimes we need to be reminded of that. But y'all are great. I can't wait to turn the world over to you. Y'all are dope. So on that note, nephew, I'm Kimberly Braswell.
I'm Devon Croxton.
This is what show?
Talking About Us.
And we will see you next time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.